Either will.
The blackness. Keep on. Never say die. Keep on. Blackness. Keep on. Never say die. Keep on. Blackness. Never say die. Never say die. Keep on. Never say die. Blackness. Never say die. Optimistic.
When in the midst of sorrow, you can see up when looking down. A brighter day tomorrow will bring.
Hello, everyone. Enjoy the music as we let a couple more folks in and then we'll get started.
You hear the voice of reason, telling you this can never be done. No matter how hard reality seems, just hold on to your dreams, yeah. As long as you keep your head to the sky, can be you. As long as you keep your head to the sky, you can be listening. As long as you keep your face toward the sky. When things around you crumble, no, you don't have to stumble and fall. Keep pushing on and
Hello, everyone. Welcome into this space. We have a wonderful evening planned for everyone. And so we are going to go ahead and get started. Next slide. Welcome to our conversation about the Green Book for Health. We're going to go ahead and get you settled into the Zoom space, welcome you with a ritual, and then we're going to move into talking about our content with an invited guest tonight. And we are very, very excited to have you all here. Chantel?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Stella. So everyone, thank you again for joining us for this evening's conversation. We ask that you reach out to myself, Chantel Gamble, if you have any technical needs throughout the evening that I can support you with. And we want to ask that you have your Zoom meeting link handy. That's the link that was emailed to you, how you all arrived and landed in this space with us. So have that connectivity available in case you do lose service or anything, you can hop right back on with us and join. We also encourage you to use the chat to move the conversation forward by asking questions, sharing your reactions or your thoughts about the material. But we also ask that you are appropriate throughout the session when doing so. Next up, we want to make sure that you have everything available to you for your visual and audio needs, so you can have the full experience with us this evening. So as far as your audio, you enter the space muted. So we ask that you do not unmute yourself unless asked to do so. And you can see that in the example A. So if there's a line going through your microphone, that means that you are good to go, you are muted. And for your video, at the far left side of the Zoom toolbar, you'll locate the video camera icon to turn your video on and off. We'd love to see your beautiful faces. So if you do want to turn your camera on, you'll see the stop video at the bottom. Without a line going through it means that we can see you. And with the line going through it means that we cannot. So in order to operate both of those features, you move the cursor in the Zoom window to reveal the toolbar, either at the top or at the bottom or the top of your screen in order to navigate. Next up, we want to make sure that you have everything set up for your video layout so you can watch the info session how it works for you, whether you're on your laptop, your phone, or your tablet. So click in the Zoom window to reveal the speaker view, which allows you to just see the speaker, or gallery view, which will allow you to see everyone in the space all at once. And that's going to be in the upper right-hand corner. You can click the icon to switch between those views. If you're on your phone, you're just going to swipe left or right on the screen to see either the full gallery or you'll just see the speaker. And if you're on a tablet, you're going to tap your screen to reveal the speaker view or gallery view in the upper left-hand corner. So you tap the icon to switch between views in order to adjust. All right, I'm going to turn it over to, am I turning it over to you, Shoni? Or am I
Thank
turning, okay,
All righty.
awesome.
So grateful for all of you tuning in tonight, for sharing your time. Time is currency. And because we're talking about health care and the co-creation of innovations that will keep us safe and mitigate disparate outcomes or inequitable outcomes or unsafe conditions, we want to make sure that, you know, we're having a powerful conversation that is built on the foundation of community and connectivity. So if you're in spaces where the folks who are hosting tonight lead, then you know that we always open with permission to begin from the eldest in the space. If we can go to the next slide. And then we do an ancestral call, because we all have folks that came before us, those who have transitioned, those who have left a mark and a footprint in our lives that are we're connected to and we need to acknowledge, especially in a conversation about what our future holds, and then a conversation about what the past has provided us as far as information, knowledge, and opportunity. And then we're going to do something called face rights, but we'll do it collectively. And we'll keep receiving people into the space. As we set the foundation, anyone who comes later will come into the energy that we put in place and co-created. So thank you in advance for your generosity in that regard. So I'd like to know who our elders are in this space. And when we say eldership in this space, we speak about it as a point of power. We speak about it as an opportunity to pay homage to those who have lived a day longer than us. Like I'm 55 and proud of it. I'll be 56 in October. And there's somebody in the space who's 55 and a day older than me. So they're my elder and I salute them and I celebrate them. So I want to know if there's anybody in the space older than the age of 75, who is 75 and seasoned in this space or more. Anybody raise your digital hand or come off mute and just acknowledge yourself if you're 75 years or older in this space. Anyone? All right. So we're going to take it a little lower. Anybody 70 and older in the space or older in the space, between 70 and 74.
Bingo.
Bingo, Vivian, Mama Vivian. Please pardon, you didn't give me permission to call you Vivian. Thank you for being here. How old or seasoned are you, Mama Vivian?
72.
72, and I see Mama Daisy has placed their name in the chat and said me. So how old are you, Mama Daisy? 70 years. All right, so we'll ask both of you, Mama Vivian and Mama Daisy, do we have permission to continue? Can you just give us an affirmation or tell us no? Like we'll see what you have to say. Can we continue?
Yes, you
Yes,
can.
we can.
Ah, I love that you both said it together. And I see Mama Margaret Safo with hand raised. Are you also someone who is in the decade of 70 who would like to give us permission?
Yes, please.
Thank you. And how seasoned are you, Mama Margaret?
Out season
Yes, how old are you?
71, almost 72.
Yes, when's your birthday?
27th of this month.
Oh, yes, happy birthday, happy early birthday. So happy to have you here. Yes.
That's
Thank
my
you.
mama.
I know it's your mama. I know it's your
Yeah.
mama. Happy birthday, mama.
We
All
also have
right.
Michael in the chat, 74.
Yes, Michael, let's hear your voice because we want to put
Dear brother.
real energy in the space and co-create with you. So can you give permission as well?
Definitely.
All right. Thank you, Michael, for being here.
Right.
Now that we've done that and we've lifted up that energy, so grateful, so proud, we want to move to the ancestral call. And we're going to do this with velocity, like quickly, but potently. So we all have ancestors that we know and love. Some of them are part of our bloodline, either our matrilineal or patrilineal line. And then others are folks that we embrace as a part of our extended families or communities. And they're not blood related, but they're connected to the blood of the folks that are aligned with your tribe. And so I want you to drop in the chat the name of an ancestor or multiple ancestors that are part of your well-being, and that can be mental, spiritual, emotional, or physical. Like I didn't personally know Octavia Butler, but her writings have supported me with my well-being, seeing an Afrofuturistic world where possibilities are endless. She was amazing and she was intuitive, and she died she died too soon, but it's all in divine order. But drop the name of an ancestor, and that's somebody who's transitioned already, that has been part of your well-being, whether you know them because they're part of your literal family, or you know them because they're part of your extended chosen family, and they've guided, directed, and supported you. And it could be an artist, it can be a historian, it can be an academic, it can be your neighbor who took care of you and looked out for you when you were young. I had a Miss Mac on my block, and she used to look out the window and be watching us when I was little and telling on us. And boy, when I was young, I couldn't stand Miss Mac, but now I get why she was doing what she was doing, sitting in that window. So she also took care of my well-being. So I see names in the chat. Can someone call on the names? Well, we may not get to all of them, but let's say some of them before we move forward.
Absolutely. So let's go back. Let's go back. Let's bring in this energy from our amazing ancestors. So we're going to start with James Baldwin,
Yes.
Vivian,
Mm,
Bob Marley,
Ashe.
Michelle Gamble,
Mm,
Isaiah, Grandma Badu, Nathan Gamble, Emilia Tata Hago, my mom. Okay, awesome. Bell Hooks,
yes.
Doris Jacobs, Margaret Scott, Tom Porton, Grandmother Liza, Lizzie Clark.
Busy.
Oh, she
Yeah.
transitioned at 107. Yes.
That's my grandmother.
Bringing
Yes,
that energy.
Grandma.
We love that. Thank
Yes.
you.
Ashe.
Bless her. Andro Gardner, Nina Simone. My great granny, Alice Corral. Thank you, great granny, for being here with us. Charity Granderson, aka Aunt Charlotte. Baba, Doris Jacobs, excuse me, Marcus Garvey, Father Jimmy D. Thompson, Val Weeks, Teresa Lacey, Tammy Hodge, Andrew Wilson, Morris Lacey Jr., and Mildred McElvin are in here with us tonight. Thank you
Beautiful.
so much for
Beautiful.
covering us.
Yes, we acknowledge and have deep gratitude for the covering. And I want to say this in this space, because we're having this conversation, there'll be different emotions and thoughts and energies coming up. I love virtual space and live equally, because we can be intentional about how we show up. And so if names come up for you in this session that you didn't name in this segment, don't make up that it's too late to drop the name in. Drop the name in. They're tapping you on the shoulder. So drop them in, and they'll help guide us through this powerful conversation, which also has many nuances to it. When we were prepping to come in, we started talking about disparate care and mistreatment and, just how we're feeling for the day. So we don't have conversations just connected to living beings. We're connected to all the energy that came before us and the energy that will come after us. So let's keep stirring that up and moving that in the space. Thank you all. So I want to move forward with face rights. And I want to ask for the slide to be placed back up so I can share what that is. Now we're going to do this in collective space. A lot of times when we have smaller groups, and there are 51 of us in the space today. So if we did face rights like we normally do it, we would be here for 2 hours, right? But tonight we're going to do it and utilize the energy of the chat so that we can deeply connect with one another and keep building, because I feel the energy of this community. Y'all are so amazing. And there are more people coming, as I said. So please share in the chat, right? And I'll call on a few of you to say these things out loud. But for the most part, the majority of us will be sharing in the chat. So please share your name, your age, because as you see in this space, we celebrate age and we honor it. Share your gender pronouns, because not all of us go by she and her or his and he, but some of us go by other pronouns and bring other energies into the space, and we welcome that in as well. And you in fully and completely as you are. And then who your people are, like who are your people? My family's from the South, so who your people is, like where you come from, gal. So we want to ask who your people are. So if you identify as African American, I always say I'm blackity black, black, and more black, right? A little bit more black. There's never enough for me. So we ask who your people are. If you're Caribbean American, if your people are from the motherland, like drop that in. And then one more thing we want you to share regarding your health. So one thing regarding your health that you wish that you could go back and fetch. Now I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this question in this way. Who in this space knows what the image is on the left-hand side of the screen? Drop it in if you know what it is. Anybody know what that image is? Just yes. Yes, drop that in. I love it. I love it. The knowledgeable people in this space. And there's another symbol. There's two symbols actually for this, and this is the Sankofa symbol, right? It's part of the Akan tradition from Ghana, West Africa, and it's such a powerful offering. And there's so many symbols that are associated with that tradition, that culture. But we love this, and I say we because my ancestors and yours love this energy and this symbol. If you see this bird, and what that round piece is, that little delicate round piece, it's an egg, right? And the bird is looking over its own shoulder with this egg, and it's technically in the beak. And an egg is very delicate. And what that egg represents is the things that we go back to fetch from the past. And it can be, the past can be so delicate, and there can be pain associated with it and joy associated with it. So we in this space will go back and fetch, because that's what it means. Go back and get or fetch something from the past. Go back and get it. And there's another definition that I used from years ago when I was part of a sacred community. And it means the way out is back through, that we have to go back through to get out from some of the things that we've experienced, especially as Black and brown folks here on terra firma. So for face rights, what's one thing regarding your health that you wish you could go back and fetch and reclaim so it could be processed and looked at and acknowledged, especially if it was traumatic and nobody ever came and said, I'm sorry, or you were mistreated? In the work that I do, sometimes people are like, I never even knew that was abuse that I experienced. So you need to go back and fetch a story that you thought was normal, right? That this happened to you. And now you recognize that it was disrespectful and that it was dangerous. And maybe it was even a near-death experience and you didn't even know it, but your mind and your spirit knew it unconsciously. So drop that in the chat. And please tell me what's something you would want to go back and fetch. And I'm going to share something so that I'm going to share face rights so you'll know what I mean, and keep dropping it in. And I'll call on a couple of you before we move forward because we have a lot in store for you for sure. So my full name is Shawnee Renee Trellis Benton Gibson. My age is 55 and I'm in my stride. My gender pronouns are she, her, and hers. Who my people are, I told you I'm African American, I'm blackity black, black, and more black, and proud of it. And one thing regarding my health that I wish that I could go back and fetch is that when I gave birth to my second child, which was very traumatic. She came in the 7th month. She had a birth defect. She had surgery. They flew her out on a helicopter to another hospital. Me and my former husband had to drive to another hospital 2 hours away to get to her. By the time we got to her, my mind was impacted by postpartum depression and psychoses. I was having delusions and I didn't believe that the baby was mine because my mind wasn't my own. And nobody checked on me and nobody wanted to know how I was. They were very concerned for the baby, and that's great, but they did not check on my well-being. And if someone had, I would have been able to get the treatment that I needed. Thank goodness I made it and my baby made it, but I wish I could go back and fetch that moment in time and take care of that 21-year-old young woman who had this baby under such traumatic circumstances. So I would go back and Sankofa that experience so that I could clear the way for me to be more grounded and healthy in my 55th year. It was so long ago, but I still feel and experience the trauma in my body. So I would love, Chantel, if you can share some of the shares in the chat so that we can get to know some of the folk, even if it's pieces of the shares. Let's hear them, a few of them, so that we can move on and then share you with all of you what else we have in store.
Absolutely. So let's start. The chat has a few people in it who are participating. So we go with Teresa Lorraine Scott, 66 and full of love and life, from South Carolina and New York City. She goes by the She series, and she fetched back her mental health. Ashe. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Jackie D. Reynolds, 60 and 3 months. Okay, Jackie, nice. And her series, Afro Caribbean, and you said your heart and muscle strength. Awesome. And then we have Malcolm X who joined us in the space. We got some more ancestors dropping in to cover us tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Stella Ama Safo, 41, she, her series, Ghanaian, and American. Sorry, I might have said that wrong. Stella, can you correct me?
Good name?
No, that was good.
Okay, great. Safety and belief in all well-being.
Mm.
Tisha Lacey, 37 years old. She, her, hers, African American, Panamanian, healthy eating habits.
Ashe, thank you. Right? Ooh,
Yes. All right. We have Gina Nicole Lieto Diof, 56. She, her. My people are African Americans from North Carolina. One thing I would Sankofa about my health is my ability to nurture and rest my body the way
Yeah.
I would when I was younger.
yes, talk about it. Yes.
Mhm.
Just let's hear two more and then we'll move on to what's in store for the rest of the session.
Yeah, great. I think we let me see. Oh, a few people
I
here.
see Denise.
Yes, there's so many people. Let's go with
I
Denise
know.
Jacob. This is juicy stories too.
Mhm.
Denise 70 mix of Southern Comfort. Okay, Grenadian Spice. I love that mix, that mashup.
Yes.
Wish I could go back and hit in the head the racist doctor that gave me an
Amniocentesis.
amniocentesis
Ah,
causing pregnancy loss. I'm so sorry, Denise, and
yes.
thank you for sharing that in this space
Thank
with us.
you.
That's why we're here. Yeah. All right. So you wanted one or two more, or
Oh, just one. But if you don't see it, then we can move on to the next slide. It's okay. Oh, I see Shamira. We can read hers.
Shamira? All righty. Let's go to Shamira. Shamira Bubsby, 45 years old. She, her series, Afro Caribbean mental health from my childhood trauma from Hurricane Hugo.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. So much. So many layers. Let's move forward. Thank y'all. Thank you. I feel the energy in this space. Thank you for your, generosity, your authenticity, and your honesty. So our time this evening, we're here to co-create, as you can see, that this is not a spectator sport, that we're here to generate together. But even if you can't speak in the space, please do utilize the chat and please hold space if you can't do that, and be intentional about lending your ears, your heart, your mind, and spirit in the space tonight. So we're going to share about our history, review the history of the original Green Book that came from Black minds and Black co-creative energy. Our why, we're going to go over that and talk about the challenges in healthcare and why we need community solutions to guide us. You heard what happened to some of us in this space. So we definitely need solutions that are innovative and co-creative and indigenous in foundation and practice. Our way forward, examine how the Green Book for Health offers a different form of community empowerment, right? We're already in this. The Green Book has already ignited this from years ago, and here we are in this modern conversation, making sure that we continue with the innovations that have helped to save us. And the action, contribute to the current Green Book. You're going to experience a survey, conversation, feedback, like all of the things that are going to help us put in what there is to put in to have integrity around what we're generating collectively. So if y'all are ready, put it in the chat. Say yes, yes, yes. If you are ready, if you ain't ready, you better get ready. But drop it in, say I'm getting ready at least, so that we can carry on in the conversation. And I pass to my beloved sister, Dr. Stella Sappho.
Thank you so much, Shawnee. It is a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. Thank you for creating this space where we can really be in community. Next slide. I want to introduce a little bit more about what we're going to be talking about tonight. First, I want to introduce myself. I am Stella Sappho. I'm an HIV primary care physician. I am based in Brooklyn, New York, and we wanted to be in this session together for a couple of reasons. I have taken care of patients for over 10 years now as a primary care physician and internist, someone dealing with individuals who have HIV, and as someone who has a chronic illness myself. And so I know the system both as someone who's a healthcare worker and as someone who's a healthcare utilizer. And when we talk about having to do things differently, those are the perspectives that I'm thinking about. Because unfortunately, for many of us as Black healthcare utilizers, our safety is not guaranteed and the experience of healthcare is not always positive. And so tonight, my hope, as we put back up the slides, my hope is for us to really think about what solutions are present for us to really be able to get our safety. And so starting with our past, we wanted to go and discuss the kind of historical reality of the need for the Green Book. And if folks can mute themselves, that would be really, really great. Chantal, I'll take the slides back. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to talk to an expert in this work. And as many of you have probably heard, the Green Book was something that we had historically that many of us heard of, but didn't necessarily kind of know long term. And so we're going to start off and we're going to put ourselves into the experience of what many of our ancestors had to experience. So we're going to go back before we kind of come to the present time. And to do so, I really want us to get the lived experience of why this book was needed. And I want to warn you that the clip that we're going to show may be hard to watch due to the content and some of the language, but it really creates an emotion that I think sets the stage for why we're having the conversation that we're having. So we're going to go ahead and put that up and start with that.
Massive bubble blob with hundreds of eyes.
Oh, well, that's not scary at all. We can outrun a blob.
Uncle George can.
We cannot.
You in the car, get out! And everybody come around to the back of the vehicle.
It's all right.
Who are you?
George Freeman, sir. This here is my nephew, Atticus, and his friend Letitia.
Where y'all from?
Chicago, sir.
You're a long way from home.
Oh, we're just passing through, taking a little bathroom break, sir, is all.
Any of you all know what a sundown?
One of Lovecraft stories.
So what do they look like?
Chantal, you want to
Massive
keep playing
bubble
the rest
blob
of
with
it?
hundreds of eyes.
Oh, well, that's not scary at all. We can outrun a blob.
Uncle George can.
We cannot.
Chantal, we can pause it. So I will describe to you what the rest of the video goes on to show, which is the police officer that's in that initial image really start to put pressure on these individuals to leave that town as soon as possible. And so essentially these individuals who were traveling through the South ended up in a sundown town and were unable to move through the town without the fear of physical violence. And so it felt important, if you can put the slides up, to be able to introduce to you what the original Green Book was and why it was needed at a time when African Americans unfortunately didn't have safety and didn't have safety around their movement. And then we'll go on and we'll connect it for you around what's happening currently in healthcare. But to do that, I want to bring up a speaker, Ms. Candace Taylor, and we're going to go ahead and read her bio before she presents a little bit more about the history of the Green Book. Chantal?
Let's invite Sister Candace to share some things about herself so that we can move forward. So Candace, if you are ready, if you can share a bit of your background and anything else you want us to know about yourself, and then carry on with the presentation, which we're excited about.
Okay, my name is Candace Taylor. I am a cultural documentarian, and I've been documenting the Green Book since 2013. And it has been a labor of love. I have an exhibition that's traveling the United States with the Smithsonian, really highlighting the history, and also not just how difficult it was, but how much resilience and courage it took for us to thrive in spite of the circumstances of the Jim Crow era. So I will give a presentation kind of outlining more detail about the Green Book, but I'm also the author of a book called Overground Railroad, the Green Book and the Roots of Black Travel in America. So, and I'll have a photo of that in my slides. So I'll just go ahead and share my presentation, Stella. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let me just share. Let me get to my slideshow. All right. Okay, so yes, this is Overground Railroad, a book that I published in 2020. And like I said, I have been a cultural documentarian. I don't know why this, can you see the okay there?
Nope,
Oh,
everything
this
looks
is me.
good.
Okay, good. Because on my screen it looks a little messy, but as long as it's okay. I've been a cultural documentarian for over 25 years, and I have my first project actually was on counterculture, the American Diner Waitress. And these were women who were into their 80s, still waitressing, and in diners, mind you. And they were really visions of health for me. They were incredibly inspiring to watch how hard these women could still work and enjoyed their work and were vibrant. I also did a project on female bullfighters, working in border towns in the United States. I did a project called American Roots with the Library of Congress, which I documented different beauty shop cultures throughout the country. And like I said, my most recent project is on the Green Book, and that has been in my life for over a decade now. All right. And you know, it's interesting because since I've been doing this work, I have probably photographed nearly 300 Green Book sites. I've been going to these sites. I've traveled to about 7,000 of them, of the listings. And it's been really incredible to see today through these different forms of government interaction and disparities in our culture, whether it's redlining or urban renewal and how they've shaped our communities. So going into these places has been really important for me and to document them. I've worked on a project with National Geographic, mapping these sites. I've taken about 11 trips over the last 10 years. And I don't know why it takes, it's taking an extra second to advance the slides for some reason. Oh, strange. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Okay. So the Green Book was published in 1936, and it was published for for 3 decades through 1967. And it examines how basically, like I said, we have been an incredibly resilient group of people, Black folks. And it was a life-saving resource that really did change the way people moved in this country. It changed the way our country grew in terms of not just travel, but art and all kinds of ways that we really experienced America, because in so many ways we were shut out during the Jim Crow era. The Green Book was created by a man named Victor Hugo Green. He was a postal worker from Harlem. Here he is. He had a 7th grade education, but he was an incredible, brilliant businessman and marketing guru. He started this basically because it was out of necessity in New York. Harlem, even though in the 1930s, after the Harlem Renaissance, it was still very segregated. So 125th Street, half the places, you still didn't know if you were a Black person, where you could be, where you should be. Some of the theaters, you only could sit in the mezzanine areas. So Victor Green was really solving his own problem when he created the Green Book. And because it was so necessary, it grew very quickly. And by 1940, it was in every state east of the Mississippi River. And here was a sundown town sign, which what we were alluding to in the clip there. These were, it would say, "Don't let the sun set on you here, understand." And these could be posted throughout the country. We estimate there were thousands of sundown towns throughout the country during the Jim Crow era. And actually they went up until the 1960s. And it was really so, what was most insidious about sundown towns is you didn't know where they were. And you didn't know what you would come up across. So a lot of men, would either sleep under their car. This is a man sleeping under his car in Route 1. Sometimes in sundown towns there would be a sign, but other times there would be a bell and it would ring at 6 p.m. and that would alert the local laborers or housekeepers or people in the town who were Black. That was their signal to leave. There was more than just one Black travel guide. There were nearly a dozen of them. The Green Book wasn't the first Black travel guide. It was 1936, but Hackley and Harrison's right here started in 1930. It was only published for 1 year. And the one called Travel Guide on the right was really very popular, but none of them had the same breadth or the same reach as the Green Book. Let's see here. And that was because of Esso. Esso Gas Stations was a reliable company that Black people depended on. They knew that if they went to Esso, they would be not only served, but they would be served with dignity and they would be able to use the facilities. This was something that was pretty common. Even if there were some stations that wouldn't even serve Black people gas, but the ones that did, it was usually not, the facilities were not open to use. So Esso was really incredible. It was run by John D. Rockefeller at the time. Esso is ExxonMobil today, and they are the sponsors for my exhibition, my Smithsonian exhibition. They were on the right side of history at that time. And they distributed the Green Book. You could get a Green Book in any of their stations. They hired 2 Black marketing executives to help distribute the Green Book. There were Black chemists. There were Black people in every part of their business and every hierarchy of Esso. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Esso. Not only did Black men run the gas, they franchised their own gas stations, etc. So it was really important to have them as allies. And I want people to know too that the Green Book was an international guide. It wasn't just America. It was published throughout the world, 30 countries in Africa. You could find Green Book sites throughout Europe and Mexico and Canada. So it had an incredible reach. And this is a map of the Green Book sites I've documented. Like I said, I've gone to about 7,000 of the sites. I've cataloged nearly 11,000 of them. So, they were pervasive and they were all different kinds of places. They were Black-owned businesses that you wouldn't imagine. Things like drugstores were in the Green Book. Everything from haberdashers and department stores and beauty shops. And there were tourist homes run by Black widowed women mostly. This was before Airbnb. We were among the first Airbnbs were these homes where a woman might have an extra, especially if she had been widowed, she'd have an extra room and she'd cook a warm meal. But this was also a time for vacation. And I think it was really important to know that not just there were Black middle class folks who wanted to take a vacation like anybody else, but during the Jim Crow era and also during the second wave of the Great Migration, you had a huge number. You had over 6 million Black people moving around in the country. There were beaches in the Green Book. It was just really incredible access to a world that, Black folks had been shut out of. There were country clubs in the Green Book. There were golf courses. And this is just a quick map to show the segregation levels. The red is really where segregation was by law. And the blue, segregation wasn't official, but these were really the cluster of where most of the sundown towns were, which I think is ironic. Most people don't realize that. Sundown towns are more pervasive in the northern Midwest area and in the far western states. The South actually had the least number of sundown towns, which, is counterintuitive, but really when you think about how segregation was so entrenched in that part of the country, and they had the colored and white signs. So it was pretty clear where you should be and where you shouldn't. But I just want to give people an overview of that. This is a pharmacy that I was just at actually a few weeks ago. I'm on the road currently, I'm in a hotel, and this was in Boston, and it was in the Green Book, and it's actually currently operating, which is incredibly rare. About 3% of these businesses are still operating. And Cornfield Pharmacy in Roxbury is still with us. There's also the Hot Springs National Park. There were 29 national parks in the Green Book. Hot Springs was incredibly important because it was, at this time, it was built exclusively for Black patrons. Some of the hot springs, let me go back to that. And it was owned by 2 Black men. There's several bathhouses in the park, but the Crystal Bathhouse, that's no longer there. But to see the bath attendants and I think, you know, it was appropriate for this talk because it's about laying on hands and healing. And here we have actually an OBGYN who was in the Green Book. His name was Leon H. Reed, and he was in East St. Louis. And he said, respected and admired by all people. And I just want to say that, you know, in terms of justice, you know, I've been doing this work for, like I said, over a decade, and the country was very different 10 years ago. It was very different 80 years ago when the Green Book was thriving. But there's some things that are still the same. And there's some things that we still have to take note of, and we have to still keep working. I mean, this idea that we are entitled to equality is complicated because we've never lived in a country where we've actually realized the promise of what this country is built on. And I think it's a really important time to be alive. I think we've seen so many different levels of growth and also backlash. And one thing about Overground Railroad that I think is so important to realize that I learned is that we aren't just moving forward and getting better. You know, history is not linear. Some things move forward and we actually make some progress, and then we fall back. And it's cyclical, and some things look the same or feel the same. And some of those things are difficult to address and to admit. And that's why I think this webinar is so important, to look at our health care and Black folks in terms of, you know, we've all, I'm sure, have our stories, but Black folks in terms of how we're treated and how we can take care of ourselves in this system. I think we need tools, and I think we need guidance. And that's why, you know, like I said, I was really thrilled to be invited to participate in this and to really get a broader understanding, be part of this narrative of pushing ourselves and our country forward into being supportive and to take care of ourselves. So I believe that's it. I think there's just one
Thank
more.
you so much.
And
Yeah.
also there's a young adult version of the book as well. So for people who have, you know, teenagers, this is for ages 12 and up. But yeah, that's it. Let me stop sharing my screen. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you for having us. And I have been making my way slowly through Overground Railroad. You can see it here kind of. It's a big book, but it's very, very, very worthwhile, especially because I think what you do that's amazing, Candace, is go back in the current times. You go back to these original sites and you talk about how hard it is for so many of these Black-owned businesses predominantly to survive and what's happening in the neighborhoods around them. So we felt it was important to really take you through where this idea kind of was founded from and some of the principles behind the original Green Book. And we've asked, and I put into the chat, would just be really interested if anyone has ever seen a copy of the original Green Book or knows if any of their family ever used it or, has had any kind of interaction with it. And if so, please go ahead and put that in the chat. Just because we're interested, 80 years ago is really not that long. So we're going to move on to our why. And our why tonight really does relate to what many of us, I think, have expressed and what many of us know, which is that the healthcare system isn't always safe. And Chantel, if you can put the slides back up, that would be amazing. The healthcare system isn't always safe, and it isn't always safe depending on kind of where you live, your skin color, your level of education, and many other factors. And so it really becomes important that we're able to ground ourselves in what has offered individuals protection historically, and then think about how we can bring some of those elements back into what we're doing now. Next slide. So in our present, we find ourselves in a place with healthcare where we have to acknowledge that things are not what they need to be. And I'm going to give you some examples and do a little bit of a deep dive into just some representative examples of how Black people fare when it comes to infectious diseases, maternal health, cancer, and chronic diseases. And as you're listening to some of these statistics and trends and realities, I want you to think about your own experience. And I want you to think about your own community and what they've experienced, because we're so much more than just these numbers. And a lot of times when we start to talk, we have to really think about the why did we get here when it comes to the healthcare challenges that our community is facing. And there's many reasons. One of them is just that we face many health determinants that make it harder for us to maintain good health. And we call these in healthcare the social determinants of health. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. And that's things like, lack of education, lack of access to employment, lack of access to healthy foods, increased incarceration, all things that make it hard for you to maintain your good health. The other factors that contribute to the harshness of health outcomes for Black Americans are things like lack of access to insurance. And even if you have insurance, it being taken in different healthcare facilities that you may find yourself being pushed into. And then the reality of racism, discrimination, and medical mistrust. Next slide. And that last part, I think, is again, the kind of natural connection over to the Green Book. And so what about infectious diseases? COVID and another disease called Mpox were brand new diseases that most of us hadn't seen in the Western Hemisphere. And so the way that it works in medicine is that most infectious diseases, if you don't have immunity to it, everyone should get them at the same rates. And yet that's not what happened. When monkeypox came in 2022, in the summer of 2022, even though Black Americans made up only about 13% of the population, they were over 30% of the infections. COVID-19, everyone was getting infected. Black people were getting infected at a much higher rate, and they were double and sometimes triple the rate of those who were dying from COVID in 2020 and 2021 in particular. And then HIV, which has been around for quite some time, 40% of new infections happen in Black Americans. And in the South, 60% of those who are living with HIV are considered African or African American. And what's so interesting about this number, again, is you have to consider the proportion of the population that we make up. Next slide. What about chronic diseases and cancer, right? The numbers are so interesting there as well. Breast cancer that we start off with. Breast cancer is a pretty common form of cancer. The individuals who have breast cancer the most are actually white Americans. And yet the individuals who die from breast cancer at the highest rates are Black women. And so Black women are 41% more likely to die of breast cancer than their white women counterparts. Colorectal cancer is one that I know many of you are talking about, thinking about, hearing about. Chadwick Boseman died a few years ago at just the age of 41 from this, and it was devastating. And essentially, colorectal cancer is happening to Black Americans at a younger age, and Black Americans are 40% more likely to die from a diagnosis of colorectal cancer when they're given that diagnosis. Diabetes rates, we have double the rates of diabetes than white Americans, and 2 in 5 Black people are living with hypertension. Now, diabetes and hypertension are fascinating diseases because what essentially happens with them is that they increase your likelihood of cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases. So that's strokes and heart attacks, which we know increases and adds to the mortality burden. Next slide. What about something that everyone does, which is has babies, right? What about maternal health? If you compare the US to other wealthy countries like Japan, Great Britain, France, basically what you end up seeing is that for Black women in the US, our rates of mortality are double, in some cases up to 9 or 10 times the rates of other countries. We have the rates of poor maternal health outcomes that really are like those of low-income countries. And that persists regardless of certain characteristics. And so a study that came out recently that was highly publicized in the New York Times that really kind of put this into relief for people is that childbirth is deadly regardless of your education, regardless of your socioeconomic status and how much money you have, that the richest Black women still have worse maternal health outcomes than the poorest white women. And we're just putting it in those terms so we can understand that some of the factors that normally, quote unquote, mitigate or make better health outcomes don't apply to this area. And we know that this isn't just about statistics and epidemiology and the numbers. This is about individuals, people who are impacted and affected by this reality. And we kind of see it in the collage here. And we hold a moment for all of us who have either lost, experienced pregnancy loss, who have experienced loss of loved ones to this. It is a true crisis, and it's a crisis that has it such that Black women, at least here in New York, are up to 9 times more likely to die in childbirth than their white women counterparts. And so that is the reality of where we are. And where does that bring us? Next slide. That brings us to a place where we have to think and operate and move a little bit differently. Because what people kind of assume and believe is that, well, if we can just educate our way out of it, we can do better. If we can just get more access to resources, we can do better. And then you meet the example of Dr. Susan Moore, who was a family medicine physician in Indiana. And I want us to just take a couple of moments and hear directly from her in terms of what she experienced. Just give us a moment to go ahead and set that up.
The sound.
And they don't know how to fight for themselves. I had to talk to somebody, maybe the media, somebody, to let people know how I'm being treated up in this place. And he gladly told me, I know you're a doctor. So he didn't want the Black doctor to have no medicine, nothing. And then had the nerve to say it's because of him, the nurse, that I got the medicine. Really? Because of you? No. How about because I had that stat CT in my neck where it showed all of that lymphadenopathy and infiltrates? Yeah, you didn't know about that? You didn't get that in report? That's what I said. To being Black up in here, this is what happens.
Doctor.
And so it goes on to kind of talk about the impact, which is that 2 weeks later, Susan Moore dies, leaving behind her son who takes care of the rest of her family. And we have to remember that every time we have the impact of poor health care, the individual suffers and or passes away and leaves such a huge impact on their community. And so I wanted you to kind of hear the words and see the image of an individual who most of us would think, well, she's a doctor, she works in a health system, she'll be okay, to kind of remind us that the protections that we think we have in place are not necessarily going to protect us. Next slide. And yet, we never just come forward and talk about the problem without thinking about the solutions. And so we're going to talk together about some of what we have learned about and kind of understood based on our understanding and research of the historic impact of the Green Book. And so as we think about the future, as we think about, going to the past, understanding what Black people did when they felt unsafe and how they brought their communities and themselves together to really create shared knowledge and safety. What we've now imagined, next slide, is something similar that we're loosely calling the Green Book for Health. And I want to really shout out so many people who are on the call now, because this came together through a community conversation with Wake Up Everybody when we're talking about bad healthcare experiences, and people said, you know what, we need a guide. And so what is this Green Book? This Green Book is really meant for those who are seeking guidance in their health journeys. They want to know how they move forward within their healthcare journeys in a way that's going to help them feel covered and help them feel
Did you
empowered.
turn off the fire? I told you.
If we can just mute folks.
We actually talking about the fire, so it's great. So go ahead, carry on.
And so the Green Book wants to do three things. It wants to be a guide. It absolutely wants to be community informed, and it wants to focus on safety. And I'm going to tell you about what that looks like. And as you're listening, I want you to put on the hat of someone who's co-creating this with us, because as I said, this was really brought forward through conversations with community members. What would you add? What would you want to see? What does this bring up? What kind of questions does the Green Book kind of create for you that you'd like for us to really think about together? Next slide. So in the first portion of the Green Book, it's really a resource guide. And so it's a physical book, and it'll also be online, but it's a physical book that you will have. And what it has is it has information about how to navigate healthcare. So I come from a family of physicians. My mom is a pediatrician. I'm a primary care doctor. I went to Harvard for undergrad, med school, and public health school. I spend lots of time with physicians. This is the portion that many of us who are healthcare workers have really invested in to say, here's what we want our patients to know, especially our Black and Brown patients, to be safe. Here's how you ask questions of your doctor. Here's how you engage with your healthcare system to make sure that they know, or your clinic rather, to make sure that they know that you're not the one that they need to not come correct with. Here's how you follow up and get the information that you need. Here's how you really get the best out of your healthcare journey. And that's included in that portion. Then we talk a little bit about, well, what happens if you run into one of the challenges that we discussed in, why do Black people get poor healthcare? And it's often racism, discrimination that leads to medical mistrust, right? And so we have a section called We Demand Justice that really talks about what we want to see happen if you do face discrimination. So if you're someone who's gone to a clinic and something has happened, how do you address what's happened in a way that allows you to have redress and allows you to have the kind of solution seeking that you need to do to be comfortable and safe? And then the last portion of the resource guide, again, is really created with all of you in mind. So we go into deeper conversation about the topics that you're interested in. And in the first kind of beta version of this, the topics that folks have said that they're interested in are around understanding more preventative health. So instead of always waiting for medications to heal us, how do we actually utilize preventative health principles to keep ourselves safe? Or other things like being able to really understand about maternal health and seeking the right resources. And so that portion is something that we have created. And if there's parts of the deep dive topics that you're like, we really need a section on autism resources for Black, for the Black community, we can absolutely build out some of these things. But that resource guidance is in some ways part of the easiest stuff to create, because we have the kind of internal knowledge that we can put together and really create something that's a physical thing. And if you'd like to see a copy of what we have so far, I'm going to put into the chat an example of one of the early prototypes of the Green Book. Pardon the typos, pardon how messy it is, but you can kind of physically see what it is that we're creating. That's our kind of 2024 version of this Green Book that Ms. Taylor kind of talked us through. The next slide now takes us through the part where we need your brilliance. And so with the last half hour that we have left, we're going to be really tapping into all of you. And so the second part of the Green Book is a community guide. It will live online. You can get it on your phone, you can get it on your computer or your tablet. It's going to be password protected because we live in an era where, unfortunately, there are people who are trolls who want to come into spaces, especially spaces where Black people are trying to just mind their own business and cause havoc and cause issues. So for now, it will be password protected. But what will be in there will be information that's community informed, using the word of mouth principles that Candace told us about that really led to investments in the original Green Book, using those word of mouth principles to say, who are the doctors that you should go see? What are the health systems that you should be taking a look at and utilizing? And so to get that information, we've designed a survey process that's super easy, super fast for you to be able to share information with each other. And so again, the first part is that resource guide that's kind of created. You can take a look at it. You can kind of get a sense of the feel. And then the second part is this community guide. And that's us talking to each other about what we want to know, what we want to share that's important to share around who in our neighborhoods, who in our kind of local regions are offering good health services. Because this has a geographic component, I want to say that I love that folks have called in from all over the country. I want to set the expectation that we're building out the New York and kind of East Coast region first. And we eventually want to take this down south for sure, Midwest, West Coast, doing a series of these virtual conversations and then getting people to have input and then continuing it from there. And I also want to say that this idea, we're going back in time and picking it from the Green Book, but there are examples of it now. And those examples are pretty tremendous. And so there's examples of this type of work within the maternal health space. There's examples of this type of work for Black women. And what we're trying to do here is expand it out to all Black folks and say, this is for Black women, Black men, Black children, who are really looking for a way to have safety as they go to look for healthcare professionals and health centers that they should utilize. Next slide. And so I'm going to give her a moment to kind of get us set up in breakouts, and I'm going to give her a moment to come on for Shani to do this portion. But you've heard us present a lot. You've heard us take you back in time to think a little bit about the experience that we had back in the 30s and 40s and 50s that required us to have the original Green Book. We took you to our present time where we said healthcare is not doing it for many of us. And that's not going to change in the short-term future. And now we're saying in our future, we want to build a resource guide for ourselves. And so we want to know what you think. And we're going to ask you to please go into breakout groups. And I'm going to turn it over to Shani to kind of give you a little bit of guidance about how all of that is going to work. Shani, are you good with that? You want me to keep going?
No, I'm absolutely good.
Awesome.
All right. And then because we're here for making sure that we're all balanced and healthy, you can rest your voice and I can jump in to share with the community that we want to hear from you. I've gotten a couple of messages about different sections of the Green Book and areas of focus. I'm a psychotherapist by training. And so, of course, I want to make sure that there is information in the Green Book about therapists that folks can tap into so that they can experience the best covering possible when they're considered neurodivergent, when they're seeking family therapy, when they're seeking an assessment, or they need to receive an evaluation by a psychiatrist. So these are important pieces. So keep the questions coming. But we're going into the breakout room so that we can hear from you. We are committed to community. So co-creation and inclusion is a huge part of this. We have smart people in the space, but there are different levels of competence and smartness, right? So intuitive ability, lived experience, the area that you grew up in, the language that you speak. We believe heavily in indigeneity as a huge contribution to the work and the co-creative process. So when you go into the breakout rooms, you'll have a short period of time. So whomever you're in the rooms with, and it'll be 3 to 4 people, we ask that you answer one of these questions. So we have them on the screen so you can check them out and look at them. And when you go in the breakout room, you already have your question in mind that you want to answer. So let me say this really quickly. What do you think is the foundation? And the questions, and there are 3 to choose from, lucky us. What are your healthcare experiences? But I want to say that you could take up a whole 5 minutes sharing about that, right? Because there's so much to share. I know I have a lot to share. I'm 55. I've had a lot of experiences, but pick one that stands out for you or a couple that can be bridged together, and then share about that using about a minute and a half of the time so that your folks who are co-creating the breakout room can share as well. What parts of the Green Book for Health resonate with you? So you just got a presentation. I know maybe folks weren't taking notes, but if anything stands out for you, what parts of those? And if you saw something that was missing, you can say what parts you would like to see. And what wonderings or questions come to mind with the Green Book for Health? Like, somebody sent a question about sections once again. So we want your brilliance in the space. Do talk about it, do co-create and create time that's equitable for everyone in the space, because we only have 5 minutes, and then we'll hear some of the discussion when we come to the general space. So you're going to see a prompt to go into the breakout room. Click the prompt. If you don't look for it and click it, you will not be placed. And so look for it. And Chantel, any additional instructions before folks go in?
No, we're good to go. Thank you.
All right. And just a quick question. When the time is up, will they come in with 10 seconds? We'd rather not have a minute
Yes.
countdown. All right.
So
Awesome.
everyone will get a 10-second countdown. You should be able to see the clock at the top so that
Wonderful.
let's assign somebody in each group, assign someone to look at the time.
Yes.
And then let you all know when it's time to come back.
All right. Looking forward to hearing about your phenomenal conversations, and see you when you return.
All right. So if you have not seen it already, you should have an invite to join a room. So please click on the invitation. All right. All right.
What happens sometimes is that folks don't necessarily see the invite, or there might be a tech issue. So just encouraging those who are in the space to have the conversation live in the space. And we're going to spend the same amount of time. We have a little bit over 5 minutes on the countdown. So I see Omari still in this space. Omari, did you not? He left. He must have heard me about
No.
I have to call his name.
Amari's here. He's here for the combo. He's gonna stay here with us.
I was in the room and then I got
Got
kicked out. I
snatched.
don't know what happened.
Yeah, why should we believe you, Omari? And Laura, I see your beautiful face. What you still doing in here, Laura?
She's joining us too. She's joining
All right,
us.
awesome. And I see Z and Mama
Camilla.
and Sister Val and Camilla and Stacy. I know y'all have been in many spaces like this with us before. And so find your room and support the conversation, and let me check in with folks who are in here. If you're in here, I'm going to call your name because that clearly means you want to be with me and you want to talk to me and us. All right. So Z, can you hear us? Or Ivy Turnbull, are you able to unmute? Camilla, are you able to unmute? If y'all are still in the space, I wanted to ask the questions of you in the space. So anyone? And I see Candace is still in here with us. You can jump in too if you wish, no pressure. I love that you're here. So Laura, you're still here. So can you unmute so I can talk to you?
Sure.
All right, thank you, my love. So let's take one of these questions and have you answer. And let me see which one we'll choose. So overall healthcare experience, and I think it's important for you to say what you do for a living too, so that it can enhance what you're about to share.
I'm a retired registered nurse. I've worked in long-term care for 17 years. And my personal experience in health care, speaking for me, is that I never felt respected. Going to most doctors, I felt disrespected. The last time I went to a hand surgeon in a major hospital, he came in the room with his 2 students. I sat there. He didn't even say hello. I said hello. He said, "Let me see your hands." He looked at my hands. He said, "All I have to do is cut your hair, come back to me when you're ready." I left, I really felt disrespected. And it took me back to how I saw the doctors treated the clients in long-term care. Some of their main mantra was that they're on their way to glory. And they would feed them with so many medications. We had to write care plans for 9 medication or more because it was dangerous. But they still keep feeding them to counter the adverse reaction. So you go in, I'm in pain. Okay, I give you this medication. Then what I noticed was how they would use certain medication to treat other symptoms. There are psych meds that they can treat for appetite, to increase appetite. It wasn't meant for that, but these are some of the stuff that I noticed and that aggravated me and stressed me out.
Thank you so much, Laura, for always sharing so candidly and honestly. And let me see if I can call on someone else to get an answer to one of the other questions. All right, let me see who's in the space. Elizabeth, I see you. Not sure if you're able to unmute. Sharina, I see you, and Zakia. If anybody whose name I have called is able to unmute and share, I would love to engage with you while we wait on the folks to come out of the breakout rooms. So anyone?
Z says she can't at the moment.
Okay, no problem.
She's listening in.
Understood. Okay, I see. Did someone unmute? Elizabeth, I see you.
Yeah, I'm Elizabeth Cohen. I'm actually somebody that works with Dr. Stella Sappho on the civic engagement side and some civic and civil rights and anti-racism, structural anti-racism work. So for clear reasons, I'm not sure that I should be even saying this, talking about it. So I'll hold my comments, but I feel like given the presentation that we had and the thoughts that were put out in the space, that the onus is on everyone to both help with the design of this book and also make the situation better in every way.
Okay, well, we have your voice
from the inside and the outside.
Absolutely. And we have your voice in the space. So, we're extending an invitation to share at least this. I don't want to make an assumption because you said it's clear. It may not be clear for everyone. You identify as a white person. Is that correct? Can't hear you, Elizabeth. Uh-oh.
Oh, there you go. It wouldn't let me. I think I got pinned. I'm pinned, and so it didn't let me unmute myself. Right. I identify as a white woman, but with a long history of this work, and going back generations, as many white Jewish people do.
Okay, thank you. And then also identifying how other parts of your identity. So just want to acknowledge that we are going to need co-conspirators. We're going to need, folks say different things. Allies is not as popular, but we're going to need people who identify like you identify to be in the conversation, supporting those who would need this information once it is created and put out for public consumption and use. So thank you for being in the space. All right, we see folks coming back in. Chantel, let me know when everyone's back.
Hey.
We had 60 some odd folk in the space earlier. Some may have jumped ship. You know how it goes when you put them in breakout rooms.
That actually
They're
is
like,
a
I'm
thing.
out of here.
We're down to 53, but that's
All
okay.
right. Never down,
Yeah,
never down.
No.
Yeah. So I want to invite a couple of folks to share, but we have more in store. We want to engage in more interactive processes so that we can get your information, your ideas, your energy inside of this. This is a co-creative experience. So Zawadi, I see your hand. I love that you're jumping in. And if you're sharing about the breakout room, just choose one question to share from. So Zawadi, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, awesome. Go ahead.
So I will share about my experience, which was going to a GYN back the late 90s. And he referred me to another doctor. I had fibroids. And that was a tall Slavic man who told me, who screamed at me that I would have to have a hysterectomy. I was completely torn apart. I left. I went back to the GYN. I didn't do anything for years until I found a doctor who did not believe in hysterectomies. And then I could deal with my fibroids.
Thank you. And Zawadi, I know I can ask this of you. Please just share the emotion that came with that experience.
There was pain, there was fear, there was intimidation. I felt beat down.
Got that.
I didn't even feel I had the resources. And I was going to St. Paul at that time, had a whole women's ministry.
Yes.
I didn't feel I had the resources to combat that. And so I laid low, I did nothing.
Thank you so much for that.
Until it was time to feel something else. Yeah.
Yes. And what I will say about that is even when you're surrounded by conscious people who will support, sometimes we feel stifled and silenced in those spaces and don't know how to tap in. So thank you so much for that. It's part of the conditioning and the acculturation. One more thing. Oh, sorry. Yes.
What I was clear of was I was not having a hysterectomy no matter what.
Ashe. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There's so many people who haven't taken that position and have had unnecessary ones. So thank you for that. We have time for Dr. Bambi. For the others that have their hands up, if you can drop your shares in the chat. And Dr. Bambi, if you can pick one other than the first one, because you already got this. You got this.
Pick that one anyway. And I were talking about three things related to the Green Book. Number 3, question number 1. What is the set in the Green Book? Will there be a set of criteria or a checklist, if you will, that helps someone to where you literally are checking off the strengths or I'm not going to use the term weaknesses, or things that need to be a priority, but they may or may not exist. And so that, especially if you're seeking community input, how we tell you if this entity is culturally competent, staffing, whatever the criterion are, is there a way for us to give feedback about that? Number 2, race. We all know that back in the day, you weren't going to anyone white to seek support. You weren't trying to stay, you weren't trying to get in care or whatever from someone who didn't look like us. But in this day and time, there may, and we talked about it, we may have practitioners who do not look like us, but have worked very hard to build systems of care that are supportive of people of color. How will that fit into the recommendation of the place to go? And then finally, it's a setup on the basis of healthcare disparity.
Mm-hmm.
It was cancer services or whatever, mental health or AOD or whatever the classifications are. Will recommendations be able to be made by health disparity?
Ashe. And what you have provided, Dr. Bambi, is exactly what we desire. We want this feedback. We want these suggestions. And, some of what you said is already in mind, but we can only expand on it by hearing your voices. And thank you for just your diligence. And we also want you all to hold us accountable for what we put out there and to keep offering these solutions, because the answers are within the community. That's why we're doing this. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being you. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to, Stella, if you could come off mute and just share anything
So
that
we're
you
gonna
want to
go.
share here.
I love the questions. There's so many questions I'm sure y'all are coming up with. One of the invitations we'll have at the end is for you to join us in the core group that's planning this out, because Dr. Bambi, those types of questions are the type of things that we need to be thinking about at this point. But we're going to move into the section where you get to give your input. And what this is a very kind of high level, what we call beta version of providing your input. And I'm going to have Shawnee go ahead and kind of kick that off. We'll play some music as you're doing it, but this is really kind of before folks have to drop at 8. I really want to make sure that we're able to get some information from you about what you've experienced. And sorry, again, it's not going to go into a lot of detail, because in order for this to work, it has to be pretty high level for us to be able to start to understand what's working. So Shawnee, I'll turn it back to you for the slide.
All righty. Thank you so much, Stella. Before we start the music, because, you know, a little bit of inspiration to think about and vision about what the future holds. Remember earlier, I talked about Afrofuturism, the very fact that there is no other configuration of folks on the planet, DNA, lived experience, mamas, daddies, aunties, uncles, cultures and communities, and just there's nothing like this on the planet. We are the only grouping of people with this experience happening right now. We're so unique. And so if you're not inspired by that alone, we invite you to be inspired by the music that we'll play in the background and the opportunity to share your input, your desires, what you would want this green book to look like, feel like, what the experience of utilizing it would be like for you and your people who are going to tap into this to save a life. Think about it like that. The Green Book, the Negro Traveler's Guide, saved lives, stopped lynchings, stopped harassment, stopped generational trauma from being passed on in epigenetics and impacting how we're wired, which we're still dealing with today. And so we invite you to listen to the music, to fill out the survey, and to stay with us so you can be contribution. And so we're going to play this music in the background. It won't take long, and we'll do it over the next 5 minutes.
And I just want to say the survey, it's one link that we're going to put, I'm going to keep putting it into the chat. You can fill it, and you can fill it for your healthcare provider, your doctor, your nurse practitioner, etc. And then you can take that same link and fill it again for your health system, your clinic, your hospital. So it's the same link, but you just choose to kind of fill for a different section. And that's to make it easy when you're sharing the link with people for them to be able to offer whatever they have to offer.
Yes.
May I add that I'm doing the survey, but I don't represent any of those things. I don't represent a health center, nor do so.
No, you're filling it for a health center. So you're saying, I have a Dr. Smith,
right,
that I see who's excellent, or I go to, St. John's Hospital, it's great. Or, I live in this community 20 years ago or 10 years ago, I went to this hospital and it was challenging, and I want people to know that that hospital is challenging. And so you're filling it as a healthcare user.
Yeah. I want to offer something up as well, Stella. Please think outside of the box. There are folks that see practitioners that are phenomenal. They might be practicing holistic medicine, or they might be a podiatrist, or a lab that you go to. Sometimes I've gone to labs to get a breast exam or screening, or to get blood drawn, and the folks have been rude and mean. Think far and wide and comprehensively about the folks you want to recommend or not recommend, and the health systems that you've navigated that served and did not serve. So please do that, so that we can have a comprehensive offering in the Green Book. So Chantel, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
All right, awesome. Oh, well, let me say
Are you
this.
complete, Dr. Bambi? I'm sorry. Did you get your question answered?
No, but don't worry about it.
Oh, well,
we want to make sure you're good.
yes, we want to make sure we take care of you, Dr. Bambi, for sure.
Fine.
Yes, so, perhaps what we can do is, we might be able to step into a breakout room and get clear, or do something to support you so that we can move forward with you and with the collective, because we don't want to leave you behind and have there be confusion. I know your contribution is going to be stellar because of how you've been in the space already. But what I wanted to offer up is it's 7:55. We may go a little bit over, so we're asking for grace so that we can complete this entire thing, because it's that important. This innovation is truly important for the health and well-being of our community. So Chantel, you can put me in a breakout room with Bambi, Dr. Bambi, and then play the music, and then I'll return with her.
No, I'm filling it out based on the definition that you just.
Oh, great. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that Dr. Stella provided. That's wonderful. I'm glad you're good. All right, excellent. So Shan, music, please. If it's playing, we can't hear it.
And as y'all are filling the survey, I'll just show you what it is that you'll see.
Express yourself.
Okay, so if you don't mind filling the survey, that'll be wonderful. Thank you, thank you.
Lord, Lord, do it good. All right. It's not what you look like when you're doing what you're doing. It's what you're doing when you're doing what you look like you're doing. Express yourself. Express yourself. They're doing it on the moon, y'all. In the jungle too. Everybody on the floor, yeah. Jumping like a kangaroo. So let the horn do the thing they do, y'all. Some people have everything and other people don't. But everything don't mean a thing if it ain't the thing you want. Express yourself. Express yourself. Oh, do it. Oh, do it. Do it to it. Go on and do it. Y'all do it. Get it. Express yourself. Express yourself. Spread yourself, 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 whoa, Lord. Hey, Lord, spread yourself, spread.
Okay, so thank you so much for filling the survey. We wish we had time to get into further conversation because there's just so much richness, I think, around what you've all started discussing and some of the ideas that I'm seeing in the chat around how we really build this out. I want to invite you, and I'll put up the slides with some of the next steps that we're hoping to take on. So if you're filling this out and you're thinking, okay, I really want to make sure that my neighbor, next slide, is able to fill this because they have a lot of good ideas. We're going to be sending, and you'll be able to get this little flyer here. It's like a little postcard. It's a digital postcard that you can forward and send over to loved ones who will be able to fill the survey as well. And so it just says, join us in building this community resource. And it has a QR code that you can point your phone to that'll get you to the site, where you can click on the little link that's in there. And so that's one way to help us, is to share this information and to say this project is happening. We want to be able to build a resource for ourselves. As I've said, there's a lot of work that needs to go into it, and folks like Dr. Bamby and others are already thinking, how do we really capture the kind of level of detail, the right communities, et cetera, that we need to be able to get to. So I invite you, if you're interested, to join a core group that's going to be working on building this out. And our hope is that we can get resourcing for this so we can really compensate folks for their time and really be able to do this in a way that honors the energy and efforts that are going into it. And then regardless of everything else, I want you to be able to know that we'll stay connected with you all through periodic email updates to say, this is where the project's going, this is what we're doing. And we, want to make sure that we're able to kind of keep you all posted on that. Next slide. For the sake of time and for honoring kind of the efforts that you've all put into here, and for those who are able to stay longer and continue the conversation, we definitely invite you for that as well. We just want to thank everyone who's attended, you all, Ms. Taylor. I want to thank the co-sponsors, Wake Up Everybody, Speak, Move, Change, certainly Shawnee and Chantel for really bringing this together. And then we also want to invite you, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, there's a lot that was presented tonight. I have a lot more thoughts that I have. I want to make sure that I can kind of be in touch. We're sharing into the chat my information so you can get in touch directly and we can continue the conversation. Feel free to reach out to me at any point for us to be able to really continue to build this out. And so as we close, I want to invite you all. Actually, Shawnee, do you want to take this or do you want me to take the close? Just because you're so brilliant at really kind of opening and closing spaces with folks.
Yeah, and I was going to say it on the side. It would be great to hear from a couple of people, just a couple, because y'all have been so generous with us. I would love to hear from Marjorie, if you are willing to share, if you're still in the space, about what you've heard tonight and something that stands out for you. And then one other person, if you could raise your digital hand if you choose to share. And then I'm going to ask us to do something to close out so that we can get complete. So I see, let me see, Florence. And is Marjorie still here? I think she might have left. She's gone. All right, so we have Florence and we have Teresa, just 2 shares. So those 2 folks I'll hear from or will hear from, and then I'll do a closing quick activity so we can transition off.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart because most of my life I've been dealing with the healthcare. I personally, my mom, and seeing a lot of disadvantages. Like, my mom suffered from depression all her life, and she suffered from asthma. She suffered from asthma, but no one treated her for the depression. All they did is treated her for asthma. So we were left without a mother most of the time. And I experienced this is firsthand. So, but I became an advocate for myself, no matter what. I've been an advocate for myself. And recently, I had to be advocating for myself in one of the best hospitals. I was hospitalized for 5 days, and I had to advocate for myself to be able to get the best treatment, the treatment that I deserve. And I told them before I left, I said, I'm not one of the ignorant. I am, not stupid. That's what I said. You're not going to get away with treating me this way. You're going to communicate with me. You're going to be transparent with me, or else I would not work with you. So this is what I had to do. I was suffering liver failure, and in Cornell Medical Facility, it left a lot to be desired with the treatment that I received. But that's complete.
Thank you, Florence. And one of the things that we want to create relief for is, I think it's very difficult to experience a medical crisis and then have to be your activist and advocate for yourself at the same time. So thank you for sharing that. Definitely watching another loved one be mistreated and misdiagnosed and not getting all the comprehensive care that they need can be very traumatic as the witness and the person who's the family member or loved one holding space. Teresa, you're the final person to share, and then I'm going to ask the entire community to share. So Teresa, if you could keep it short, and then we'll close out with everyone.
Yes, hi, peace and blessing, family. I'm a disability advocate. One issue that I find is that the people that are dealing with disabilities don't have services, probably because sometimes people are dealing with you based on your disability, not as you're a person. I just feel that's an area that people do. Like I have a GYN doctor. She's not Black, but she's the only person in New York City that deals with gynecology. Like she's the only person that can handle a person who has a wheelchair. So that's something maybe we could look into, finding other Black women that can maybe come to office and see. She has some kind of, I call them the space boots that she attaches to her table. And that's the only way that I can get examined. But the last time I had with her, like I had a very traumatic experience. I felt like she was attacking my vagina. And so it took me a long time to go back to her because she was so rough with me.
Yeah.
And so, this is one of the things that I feel that people need to know, like the tools and the machines that we need so we can take care of people that have disability. Because
Sure.
most women who are in a wheelchair don't properly get GYN exam because if their legs or whatever not working, then they just don't get those exams. And so you might have people with disabilities have a lot of, women issues that are necessary because people don't know what we need. And so I've seen the boots on online before. I think they were about $5,000. So maybe I can look for information and see. But it's a table or something. It adjusts itself where a person who's a Black woman or people of color can get on that table and get properly treated. And I'm complete.
Thank you so much for that share. So necessary because the community that experiences disabilities or have comorbidities don't always get the comprehensive care that they deserve. So it's 8:08 and y'all have been amazing. Thank you for the extra time. I would love for you to close out the space in the chat by sharing one thing that you got from this experience of the Green Book for Health tonight. One thing that you received as a result of being in this space. If you can drop that in the chat, and then Chantel, you can read what the shares are. Let's go out with the energy of love and community and connection. So drop that in. I saw hope dropped in. I saw community. So Chantel, if you can continue, so we can feel those energies.
Absolutely. Knowledge that I can share with my family, hope, concern, a sense of empowerment. All right, keep them coming, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will drop or say verbally power.
Yes, and we got empowerment. Great. All right, we got empowerment, enlightenment. Awesome. And thank you all for joining us tonight to receive this energy with us. Any more shares? What else did you receive tonight? A creation. The resource must be completed. Due to political influences on healthcare, Black folks better take this election seriously. Thank you, Dr. Bambi. Awesome information I didn't know existed. Love for us, love, community, and connection. That's our strength and our power. More enlightenment. Yes. This knowledge is definitely needed. Not feeling helpless. I love that Black people in the healthcare field are putting together this book to save ourselves. Yes, we got love in the space. We got more love in the space. We got great information, knowledge. This is a good resource for our people. And then we have radical love, power, and enlightenment by the energy and love in this room. Thank you. Some folks are feeling inspired, positivity, love, awakening. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for your shares, and keep dropping them.
Yeah, and want to, Dr. Stella, if you can come off mic. I can't remember the brother's first name, but Green is the last name. Just want to speak his name into the space. So if you would.
Yeah, Victor Hugo Green was the creator of the Green Book. He was a postal worker, and so we are grateful to him as an ancestor for what he offered and the kind of vision that he had and the impact of the Green Book.
Absolutely.
And thank you both for bringing this to fruition and, taking us through tonight's info session. Thank you both.
Yeah, couldn't have done it without you, Chantal, and of course the community.
Thank you.
So y'all enjoy the rest of your evening. Get rest, hydrate, enjoy your summer. If we don't speak to some of you, just do the things that are going to make you the best human possible. So blessings to you all. Have a great night.
Take care now.
Love your family.
Bye,
Peace and
everyone.
blessing. Have a great weekend.
Ashe.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
it.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Yes,
Love.
Thanks for the invite, Shawnee.
Wisdom. Sweet dreams, sweet
Cheers. Yes,
dreams.
thank you. Good
Thank
night,
you,
everyone.
Thanks for
See you.
sharing.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for the
Thank you,
love. Thank you
Stella.
for the understanding.
That a wonderful work. Thank
Thank
you,
you, Stella.
Shani.
I hope there's a
Great.
way.
Need this. We need this.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mothers, sons is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers, sons. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom